Hey, welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we are meeting for the first time, I am Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author, and this week I am talking about snags or frustrations or problems that writers tend to face when they're writing a novel. So what we're going to be discussing today, or what I'm going to share with you today, is one of the things that writers complain about is getting stuck when they're not in their novel because they don't see the big picture, or they find that they really don't know where the novel is going. It's a little different from writer's block. It's not that they're blocked, it's just that as they're writing their novel, scene after scene, chapter after chapter, it seems as if the novel really is going nowhere. So they feel this sort of sense of, what is this novel really about? And in the blog that I wrote yesterday, which I will link at the bottom of this video, I discussed that there are a couple of ways that writers tend to write. So one is they plot everything out. So these are plotters, right? So plotters will make a list of everything that is going to be in the novel, all the turning points, all the major points, where it starts, you know, all the different parts of the scenes in the novels that need to be in the book. And they tend to have less problems. Not that they don't have any problems. They still can find that the story ends up kind of stilted or not going anywhere, but they don't really have the problem of not really knowing where they're going because they've plotted it all out. They know where they're going. But then there's the other type of writer, which is the pantser, right? So they fly from the seat of their pants. They just sit down and they start to write, and they see where the story is going to head or where it's going to lead. And I actually tend to be that type of writer. I like to discover where I'm going as as the story develops. I like to discover the story along with my reader, sorry. But that has some difficulties as well, because what happens here is you could get stuck. You could end up saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that the character was going to take that turn. This is really interesting, but now where is this novel going? What is this story really about? And so what, get out of the sun here a little bit, what happens there is that there's a lack of understanding the big picture of the story. There's a lack of understanding of what the story is really about. What is it that the story is ultimately going to say? And you know, I am an English teacher, so I do work with theme a lot, and that's really not what I'm talking about. I mean, it kind of, sort of, you can look at it that way. It's like, what is the theme of your story? But it's larger than that. It's more of what is the big picture. So if you think about, you know, just life, just kind of tying it to life, right? If we have no idea where our life is going, if we're just going through our days, right? We're going to work to make money, to pay our bills, to maybe go on vacation, we're just kind of going through our days without kind of an end goal. Like, what is it ultimately that we want from our life? What do we want our life to stand for? We can kind of get stuck. It's just kind of happening, right? And the same thing with your story. If you don't know ultimately where the story is headed, or what is the big picture, what are you trying to say with the story, then you can end up with the same issues you do with life. It's like, well, this is kind of going nowhere. What am I doing? And so I'm gonna give you an example of a story that I'm actually writing now. So in this story, what I have a character who is a medical student, and she's had issues with her family, with her parents. Her goal really was to go to medical school and to kind of get as far away from her family as possible. Her family wasn't terrible, but she just didn't deal with a lot of the issues of her childhood, and so she goes as far away as she can. So she lives in her family's in California. She goes to medical school in Baltimore. It does happen to, they do happen to have the best medical school in the country. So it worked out great for my novel and my plotting. But that's all I really knew. It was like, okay, she was going to be a doctor. In the first book, this is where she was headed. In the second book, all I knew is that she was there, and that she had these problems with her mom, and that she was going to now come back because her mom is ill, and she is going to be there to take care of her mom. Whether her mom makes it through this illness or not, she is going to be there for her mom. And what happened, one of the things that I realize is that she has to deal with these issues, these family issues. And so by the end of the novel, she has to, whether her mom survives or not, she has to have dealt with these issues that she has. Because even if she becomes a doctor, the most renowned, best doctor in the world, and she doesn't ever really have to come back, she doesn't really ever have to deal with this, right? But what happens if she doesn't? What happens if she doesn't ever heal this issue that she had with her family? Well, it doesn't matter how good of a doctor she becomes if she continues to have these issues, right? Because this she can be very successful as a doctor, but she's still going to have these issues that she never healed from, which is going to impact the type of doctor that she becomes. It's really going to impact the rest of her life, because when you don't deal with your personal issues, it does impact. So she's not going to end up being happy, right? She might be a very successful doctor, but this is going to be part of her that's really never going to be quite as happy as she could have been had she healed these issues that she had with her family and her mom. So I knew the beginning where she was starting. I know where she needs to end up. So I kind of have that big picture in mind. I kind of know where the story is headed. What I don't know is anything that happens in between, which actually I'm okay with that, because that's the way that I write. But there's a book that I read. It was really good, by James Scott Bell, and it's called Write Your Story from the Middle. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And one of the things that he talks about in this book, which really helped me to define what was going to happen and how I was going to write this book in particular, is that what he states is that every character has what he calls a mirror moment. So they have this moment in their life where they have to decide who they're going to be as a person. Like, who am I going to be? Is this really who I am? And this impacts the rest of their life. The choice that they make at this moment impacts the rest of their life. So for her, I did give her that moment, sort of unconsciously. I realized after I read this book, it's like, okay, this is the mirror moment, and this is the moment I need to expand on, where her mom collapses. And she's there to take care of her mom, but she's not really dealing with any of the issues that she should be dealing with. She's just doing the outer stuff, like making sure her mom's comfortable and all this stuff. But so she goes on a run, her mom collapses, her mom ends up in the hospital. When she comes back and she sees her mom in the hospital, she goes to the hospital, she realizes, like, I should have been there. What am I doing? I'm here to take care of my mom, and I'm not. And I'm not building this relationship, and I'm so much like her. I'm so much like my mom. And this changes everything at that point in the novel. And typically the mirror moment happens at the middle of the book. But she realizes, who am I? Who is this the person I want to be? What kind of doctor am I going to be if I don't make connections with my patients, if I don't even have a connection with my own mother, if I don't heal this thing I'm carrying around? So this becomes that moment, and she breaks down, and things start to unravel after that, right? So now she has to deal with all the problems. But this is that mirror moment. He also gives an example in his book that I really liked of It's a Wonderful Life. And that's one of my favorite Christmas stories. And there's that point, and almost everybody's watched it, right? If you haven't, you can go watch it this Christmas. But there's a point where George, there's the evil Mr. Potter who's taken over. Hold on a second here. I'm walking my dogs and they're wrapping themselves around me. But there's this moment where he's with Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter is taking over the whole city. He wants George to close down his father's savings and loan and come to work for him. And he's offering him all kinds of money. He's going to be able to pay off all his bills, and life is going to be great if basically George sells out and joins Mr. Potter. And he thinks about it for a second, and he gives him a cigar or something, and he's sitting there, and then as he's thinking about it and thinking, yeah, life is going to be good, he realizes, no, I can't do that. I can't sell out. I can't get rid of my father's legacy. And it becomes that mirror moment. Like, what kind of man do I want to become? Do I want to be the guy that fights and survives and does well, or do I want to be another Mr. Potter? So if you look at stories and you study stories, you'll see that there's always that moment in the story where the character has to make a decision, like, who am I going to be really? And this impacts the rest of the story. Now, the reason I really love this is because as somebody who's writing, even if you're not a plotter, right, but you have this big picture, you know where you're starting, you know where you want them to end, and you know this mirror moment that's going to transform your character. And the character, by the way, does not have to make the decision that's going to lead to happiness. Sometimes they make a decision during this mirror moment that actually leads to destruction, right? It leads to their demise. So that can happen as well. But you as the author have to decide that. But if you know those three things, you know everything that has to happen before that mirror moment. So from the beginning of the story to the mirror moment, what is going to lead to that moment of decision? And after the mirror moment, what is going to lead to that final either victory, transformation of the character, or to the destruction of the character at the end. So having those three ideas gives you that big picture of the story, and it cuts down on a lot of those sort of irrelevant chapters and scenes that will lead you to nowhere and unhappiness and thinking, I just don't know where I want this story to go. I don't even know what the story's about. You do know what the story's about. If you know those three things, you know that the story is about how this character deals with this ultimate decision that he needs to make, and how he deals with it is going to determine the type of person that he becomes at the end, and whether he wins or doesn't win the ultimate goal that he has for himself. So I hope this helps. And again, I write about this a little bit in my blog. I wrote about that last night. I will link it below. If you are enjoying this, if you like this series, if you find this helpful, then click the like button below, and then I will see you tomorrow for the next issue that writers have to deal with, and we'll talk about it, and see you tomorrow.